Welcome to the Winmark Sweet Spot interview series, where we explore how to reach, lead, and deliver a C-suite role today. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dax Grant, who's got a fantastic CV and background. I'd say you were a technologist turned non-exec director now. Is that probably about right?
That's spot on, John. Yes.
Okay, and you studied at Cambridge and Harvard and got an MBA from Cranfield, and you've worked at pretty much every bank out there. You've worked at Barclays, Santander, Visa, HSBC, but you've also done some charitable work, haven't you, with Macmillan and other things?
Absolutely. I do like to keep the balance between the commercial and the not-for-profit value-based world. Yes.
So a really quite an interesting and diverse background. You're also, maybe I should say, but you're also a woman in a tech area. And I was looking at some data we had recently that only 14% of CIOs or CTOs are women. So you're in a way you're in a minority group within a broader group. So I guess fighting your way through or being a pioneer in that space must have been quite challenging.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, John, in terms of going through all those different conversations in life, and that there are always the direct conversations in terms of your next position, and there's a lot of influencing, and I think it varies, in the C-suite as well as anywhere else. So hopefully it's a real opportunity to set the precedent for even more, not only women, but actually anyone from a minority background to step into their next position, whether that be in the C-suite or somewhere else.
Okay, so let's now drop back to when you were a child. So when you were small, what did you want to be?
Oh, that's a really good question, John. And to be honest, I didn't have a position that I wanted to be. I had a vision, and I had a mission statement that they actually got me to write down when I was in the States, sixth form. They got me to write this thing down, and it was really to make, well, there were three parts to it actually. The first part was about family, so creating my own family. That was very important to me. And the other two parts were really around having an impact in society and having an impact in the financial world as well. So I feel now, partly through that journey, but maybe I didn't realise quite the significance when I was writing the statements with my sixth form colleagues.
And then you went on to Cambridge, and when you left Cambridge, what did you want to do after that? How did your ideas develop?
Again, I mean, really interesting. So I was very conscious that I needed to learn about customers and I needed to learn about how businesses worked. My decision in degree was I ended up with economics. It was either going to be economics or engineering, but I knew that I needed to learn my trade from the ground up. And so I actually went to join Barclays, and I learned from the ground. I looked after a branch and I looked after a corporate lending portfolio. I felt it in the nicest sense on the sharp end of what you need to make sure is right for your client, your customer. But I was also very interested in technology, and I was very fortunate that IBM gave me an open contract whilst I was at university. So I was very respectful that I needed to understand the customer view first, but also really interesting about what this tech interest would mean in my life, and so sort of explored both in parallel.
Okay, and if you had to summarize your career in 1 minute, what would you say?
Oh, I don't know, I've ever been asked that one, John. I guess it's a combination of having a bold mission and vision in terms of the way you see yourself, and I consider that in terms of life rather than career alone, because I think it's important to keep that life perspective in terms of all of that, and the rest of it, I believe, is the opportunities that present themselves, and looking at those and evaluating those in terms of where you would like to contribute next, and that's what I did in terms of each step that I took, and equally being prepared to explore those alternative paths in terms of what takes you where next. And so some of the most interesting assignments that I've looked after are, working in Macmillan Cancer Support and then moving back into financial services. I learned a huge amount from that. But, would I have predicted that at, 15, 16, 18? Not necessarily, but I had the vision at that stage.
Based on that, do you think there were moments in your career where there were key decisions you made, or key moments that made you quite so successful?
I guess success is always kind of defined in your own sort of view of what success is. There were definitely key moments. I would say for myself, they kind of arose from my unconscious self rather than being necessarily something I'd planned towards. So, for example, to make that real, I'd always wanted to have my own family, my own children, but I always wanted to progress my leadership and international and global career as well. And, you know, I'd had a vision that I wanted to complete an MBA, and all of these things sort of happened at once. So I had my daughter. I then got the opportunity to progress with the MBA at Cranfield and take on a new opportunity. And all of these things came at once. So it was a bit of a defining moment in that, you know, I could have deferred maybe 2 out of 3 of those. Clearly, I had my daughter, but the other were very optional. But for me, it made it very pertinent in terms of my own values and really understanding myself around. I wanted to build for both. So I actually went for the MBA and the new position, as well as having my daughter sort of sit by my side when I studied. So you know, that was a particularly defining moment, and I guess circumstances, you know what they say, you know, you define the moment or the moment defines you. So for me, I took all 3 on.
And did you do a part-time or full-time MBA?
I insisted on the part-time one, and that was partly because I love studying. I mean, I got 3 degrees in the end, so I think that says a little bit, but I like to balance that with practical experience, and, you know, continue with the next executive position enabled me to do that. But also taking on a part-time MBA also introduces you to quite a global audience. So, you know, when I was sitting and completing my MBA, we worked in virtual teams. So, you know, we would dial into calls internationally and have to deal with all of those things that I later then, you know, dealt with in Visa and HSBC and all those good steps in life. But that global international experience and really understanding where we are societally was part of that whole decision-making process.
Very interesting. I did a full-time MBA, and I remember admiring the people who were doing it part-time, because it was just all your spare time is killbutt. So, and to do that and bring up a small child is an extraordinary. Just the workload is enormous on you personally.
I mean, don't underestimate that. I would agree. I mean, I took it on, and, you know, we had the conversations for me to take it on, because I would only do that with the support of the people around me. Unequivocally, they gave me the support, but it was you know, you had to learn about what you'd taken on and what had I taken on, and something had to give. And, you know, to be fair, in that 2-year period, it was a fairly intense but very self-developmental period, actually. You know, the thing I had to give up was more time with my friends that I'd had outside of the MBA. I mean, luckily I developed friends on the MBA and through the you know, the new position that I worked on, but I had to really focus on, you know, the family and my daughter, and, you know, the immediate commitments that I'd created. And then, you know, coming out of that, I wanted to reignite those conversations with my friendships from the past. And so that created a whole new set of conversations as well. So did I realize that when I took the MBA on? I certainly didn't. Did it teach me a lot about myself and, you know, when you have to make the call on certain things and decisions? It surely did. And did that set me up for executive decision making? Absolutely. But I didn't know that at the time.
Okay, very interesting. And did you and did you or have you through your career had some form of sort of mentor or guide that's helped you or guided you at certain times?
Again, interesting. I know the sort of latest thought leadership is always having advisors, and I've always had advisors, whether they have been formal or probably more informal, to be honest. And I guess it's you know, as a leader, you're taught to listen, and so I listen to the different voices in my life. And so my advisors and guides vary from, you know, some of the most senior folks and folks you'd recognise as CEOs of major organisations, through actually some of my most pertinent conversations of happen with my daughter or my son where they've suggested something, and I've had, actually, your view really counts and what you're saying is actually spot on. So I guess what I would say that's maybe counter to the usual conversations is, you know, be open to all forms of guidance, and actually some of the most unexpected places are the places to get your guidance from, and absolutely utilize all those mentors and you know, and coaches, and share both your desires and your fears and all of those things that, you know, make you more vulnerable, and that will make you stronger in the long run. But there's no one person really, but I would say my daughter and my son, I put a heavier weight on in terms of their opinion than maybe others would, and I really do listen when they guide me.
Is there a place or person or group of people you go to in sort of times of struggle or difficult times?
That's a really good question. I go to my personal relationships, my deep personal relationships that people really know me, because they will give me a view based on knowing me really well, and the decisions that we make in life are very much a self-reflection. So I tend to turn to those folks first, but equally I'm involved in quite a lot of societal networks, whether they're professional networks or more broadly, and so I'm always listening to the voices within those networks as well. So whilst I may not approach those networks directly, you know, I'll have good friends in those networks that will say, actually, Dax, think about this today. That's really key for you next. And 9 times out of 10, they're right.
Okay. And when you move from sort of organisation to organisation, are there any particular organisations moves that you've made that you feel have been sort of key in your career?
Really interesting. I guess I decided early on, I would say, that I would not be the person that would stay in one organisation for my lifetime. That was part of my character. I enjoyed the variety, and you know, I wanted to make sure I had organisational depth. So I stayed with certain organisations that I really enjoyed for long periods of time, but also through the advisory work and the non-exec work as well, it gave me a chance to bring my industry depth into position as well, and having that broad understanding of different cultures, different perspectives, whether they're within industry, in government, in local community, that was really, really important to me. So I wouldn't say there was one particular decisive path through that, but on reflection of the path that I took, there were times where I went to, for example, the not-for-profit sector, and I learned lots of things that I bring now into the commercial world. Vice versa, you know, I brought lots of commercial skills and value-based skills into the not-for-profit world. So my path has always been around normalizing those different organizations that I work with. And I guess the beauty of now is having, you know, executive and non-executive conversations. You know, the NED space is very, very strong in terms of that advisory perspective. That creates a real balance, and there's a lot to learn about the portfolio of businesses that I'm involved in. And equally, they each bring learnings to me that I can share more generically with the other organisations that I work with. So it's in the nicest sense, a perpetual learning cycle.
And as a woman in tech, have you faced any particular challenges, and sort of how have you overcome them? What have you done to help yourself through your career?
Yeah, again, a good question. I guess stepping into tech, I didn't ever think that I was a woman in tech, but I was reminded by society that I was a woman in tech. So I always approached it from the point of view, it's an area I'm really interested in. If you're interested in an area, just as I would say to anybody else, you get involved and learn. But I do experience, you know, whether it's in technology or more broadly in industry, unconscious bias, and that is quite natural. So people unintendedly can make suggestions that, you know, are absolutely fine, but equally they could be taken as you know, not necessarily progressive thinking. So for example, you know, a very light-hearted example is, you know, in one organization that I work with, My profile was shared with the organisation, and my profile picture wasn't, so you wouldn't know that I was a woman or not. But you know, I got the various notes of congratulations that everybody does. But then I walked physically into a room with one of the people that had congratulated me, and the first thing they said is, "Oh, Dax, you're a woman." So it was unintended, but it's quite interesting how these unconscious things sort of come up. So I think it's recognizing all of that in good humor, but it's also, it makes me very conscious of making sure that I'm open-minded. And some of those views, you know, still hold women back. So part of my role is to champion that and encourage other women into that space as well.
How do you stay on top of that? Because you're in a sector which is moving very fast.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is very, very fast indeed. A combination of things. I learn a lot from my my colleagues and my industry network. There's always a conversation that takes my thought process on, and equally I try to reciprocate that in the industry when I take on speaking assignments or that sort of thing. So you know, those conversations are invaluable. I read a lot, so you know, I'm connected with lots of the main sort of journals and, you know, industry thought leadership and that side of things as well. The Forbes Technology Council is fantastic as well. A lot of the leading insights are there, and also my connects with Harvard Business School do give me kind of a view into some of the latest research that's happening as well. So genuinely, I would say there's no single source, but all of those things put together are really invaluable. And you know, a lot of the fantastic thought process come from the teams that we all look after. So I do try to be on listen mode as much as possible day to
day. And when you reflect back on your career, is there anything you would have sort of done differently?
Ooh, I think it was Jack Welch that said I would have done it all quicker, wasn't it? I think that was him. So you know, whether it's the illusion of speed or not, but I think taking more and more from your network and learning about other people's perspectives, you can always do that more and more. And I would encourage myself and everyone I work with really to really absorb those views and opinions, and you know, utilize that to synthesize where, you know, where you are next and what really counts for the organization you're working within, for the communities, and also for society as well. So yeah, I would say that's probably the top tip.
Okay, thank you. And did I have interest? Did the pandemic change your leadership style at all?
It didn't change my leadership style. It refocused the distribution network that style went out through. So I'm always Dax, whether you meet me virtually or in person and we have a face-to-face conversation. What it put a lot more emphasis on is connecting virtually and the importance of rapport, relationships, people to get to know you through that virtual world. And you know, I'll give you some examples. So, you know, one area I adopted a team during that lockdown period. It was a team based in India, and you know, they didn't know Dax as the person. They knew Dax as someone in the organization. And you know, there's always myths about you in any place that you are. So for me, you know, I couldn't go and visit that team physically, but I had to put a lot of focus on building the connectivity for them to get to know me, get to know my values, and really know that they are looked after as a team, respecting that we all need to create value for the organization, and to be able to create that connectivity internationally and across different cultures. It made me focus on that more and more. And you know, I think the nice thing about, you know, working from home is that you can create that connection to yourself a lot more easily. You know, your family's in the background, you know, all of those things that you wouldn't necessarily see if you're in a formal office. I think all of that is good for people to see the real you, humanized business, and really have those more personable conversations that you know, I do believe that that's the reason, you know, anyone follows anyone or is in a group or tribe. So it made me focus on that a lot more intently and look at my own style in terms of how I share it virtually. And a lot of focus on well-being, to be honest. You know, in today's connected world, it's very easy to be involved in lots of conversations. And so the importance of creating that well-being conversation, creating the space for my team to have that conversation and to work out what it means individually for each of us, and to be able to, you know, just connect and chatting virtually. So you've got that open channel, and you know the team knows you've got their back, and they support you, and equally with your peers in the organisation as well. So a lot of personal reflection and a lot of opportunity to connect in very, very different ways.
Okay. And my final question for you is what advice would you give to someone aspiring to be, say, Dax 2? So aspiring someone who wants to inspire to be someone like you, but tomorrow?
The advice that was given to me was always be yourself, because everybody else is taken. So you know, my belief is, and my children tell me so, is, you know, the more you are yourself, the more all of these things happen, and the more you get to know yourself. I'm a great believer that, in the nicest and most humble sense, that getting to know the relationship with yourself, and therefore how you create other relationships, is very, very key. And that has become more central and part of my own learning process as well, to be fair.
Okay. Dax, it's been great to talk with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. You're a great role model for the sector. So thank you very much for taking up that torch. And can I thank everyone else for who's been listening to this podcast? Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, John.
I think I'll stop recording now. Stop recording. There you go. Stop recording.